Welcome to Grace and Truth with Gail and Johnny Rowlett.
We base this entire podcast on John 1:14, where it says Jesus was full of grace and truth. And those two words don't necessarily always go together. So we love that there's tension between those two words and that he was the perfection of both grace and truth. Join us today as we dive deep into his word and revelation and see how he unfolds both grace and truth.
Welcome to another episode.
Grace and Truth 24. Man, we're just cruising right along. I thought that some of the things that my heart has been on lately is to get a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more transparent and just honest. You know, our last episode, we talked about, the joy. And then, it kind of hit me as we were talking that some people are really struggle, could be at that very moment struggling. And sometimes one of my most, even though these things are supposed to help, we don't intend them to be some kind of a quick fix, do this, do that, and everything's going to be fine. It's
a journey,
right? Yeah. And
that we've walked this journey. We haven't had a bed of roses, that we've had a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of ridiculousness, a lot of ridiculous choices, a lot of, things, we knew better. Yeah. We knew better, if you will.
Right.
And
well said.
Didn't make all the right decisions, correct decisions.
So what I thought I would do one episode for me and one episode for Gail, and, just kind of getting to know us better, getting to know our journey and how we got here, because we've picked up some people along the way, and we just assume that everybody knows our story, and there's a lot of story to tell. And I didn't want to go back to, childhood stuff and all that kind of stuff. I just wanted to start where our relationship with God, if I can just be totally honest, and I am, is that I really feel like that there was a facade, right? I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't really have a true relationship with God.
But you know what, though? I don't think there's a lot of people, realize that until they walk through something hard.
Right.
How deep is your relationship? How secure is your relationship with the Father? And it doesn't have anything to do with him. That's totally on our level. Mm-hmm. To what degree do you want to have him all in? Like one of our past podcasts was about surrendering all. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like on the day-to-day basis? And as far as our relationship with him, if we surrender all, then that means we're going way deep. But if we're not surrendering all, then it's just kind of at the surface level or maybe a little deeper.
And that's the right word, superficial. It's not that I didn't love God, and it's definitely not that God didn't love me.
Right.
But I had a sort of a superficial level relationship. And maybe it is that until you really go through something, you kind of are, maybe I would not wish my journey on anyone.
No, but at the same time, you're thankful that you are where you are now, because now that you're on the other side, you realize that our relationships are so much deeper, and the revelation of who Christ is in our lives is so much better and so much deeper, because we've chose to walk away from this lifestyle and choose to dive deep into who he is and all that he has to offer to us and all that he is to us.
That's so good.
And how deep and how large is his love, and I know the cliche, it's very cliche, love conquers all, but it is so true.
So good.
It is so true. And our relationship with God, but also our relationship with others.
I start to say, it even,
just like it also says love covers a multitude of sin.
Yeah.
In scripture. I don't know what.
Yeah. Even our relationship has been very tumultuous at times. and we both had a lot of sharp edges that, but I believe in my heart that a lot of that, head-to-head combat, actually drove us to a better relationship with each other, to some degree. I'm hoping that she agrees. Is she looking? Is she nodding her head? I don't, but yeah, I think that the issue is that you really don't know who you are until you go through something, a storm of life, and I think that more so it's not because I'm celebrating the storm or celebrating my choices. I'm celebrating how much the Father's stepped in. I learned how good of a father he is at the deepest, darkest places. I've always known him and had a sort of religious understanding of that, but then to make really horrible choices and he not quit
right
on me,
or leave you,
and the revelation of how much I'm loved from that has impacted my life forever. And I think that's the reason I want to share it. And part of why I share the whole thing about, breaking the bonds of religiosity and explaining the difference between religion and religiosity and why I'm so against that is because it kind of puts you in a false bubble and a false narrative, and whereby you're always on a sin hunt, looking at your sins, looking at everybody else's sins, and all you're ever doing is worrying about what everybody else is doing. And instead of really letting the love of the Father invade your life. And that's what he's done for me. Yeah.
Right. For us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask him just a couple questions about how he walked out this journey, how he got to where he is now, walking this journey out. I mean, throughout, since we've always been real about our stories.
Honest.
And how we got right to this point right now.
Yeah.
What it started like as a child, progressing onward. But we're going to start with when you were in Montana, before you became a youth pastor in Toledo.
Right.
What started you down that anger, frustration road?
I was married previously, and my wife at the time, there's a whole lot to this story that I don't need to get into all the details of it, but my wife at the time took ill, and she had to have a kidney and a pancreas transplant, and then we moved to Montana, and it was all successful, and it was successful for 2 years, and everything was going great. I had a ranch in Montana, 72-acre ranch. We had 13 horses. Everything was going great. I was the outreach pastor of a local church, and there in Great Falls, Montana, and everything on the outside seemed like it was going really well. But behind the scenes, there was stuff starting to happen in my relationship with others, my relationship with my wife at the time, and then there's just all, like, it felt like all the trains coming together. All of the bad things were coming to a head at one time, and it crashed. It all crashed at one time. She took ill. I had opened the door to pornography, and gone to my pastor and said, "Hey, I've opened this door, and I need some help." And instead of getting the proper help that I needed, it turned into shaming, and throughout the church and throughout the elders, and they handled it poorly. And then I handled it poorly. I responded poorly. And reacted poorly is a better way to say it.
Right.
And then that, at the same time, she rejected her kidney and her pancreas, which means financially it ruined me. This all happened within a week. The whole thing exploded at one time. And I tried to handle it in the same old religious manner. You know what I mean? And, but everywhere I turned, I saw that those normal channels weren't working. And to be transparent, it all just felt like the whole world was collapsing in on me. So in one fell swoop, I lost my job with the church. I lost my ranch. I lost my friends. I lost my band. I lost the respect of my wife at the time. I lost
everything that you loved in Montana.
Everything that I loved about being a cowboy in Montana in one fell swoop is gone. And I knew I had to leave and go and take her to go get some help. And there was only two places I could go, either back to Phoenix or to Michigan. And her family was in Michigan, so I chose to move here. I remember driving outside of town, and there was a song on the radio. It's one of your favorite groups. Rascal Flatts was singing. I don't remember the name of the song, but one of the lines was, "I never dreamed that home would end up where I don't belong." And that for me was, I parked my truck with the U-Haul, as you know, and I looked over the side and I could look down the valley and see my ranch and realizing everything's gone. And realizing, I think that I knew in my heart that most of it was my fault, and that I couldn't face that it was my fault. So I'm trying to find fault, and mostly I found fault with God, but I had to fake it. I just put a cloak on and pretended that I was okay, and we're going to make it, and we're going to be okay. But inside there was just this great darkness and void. So then because I think that just goes back to what we were just talking about as far as the depth of your relationship with the Father, because if he hadn't already opened that door, then if you hadn't already opened that door, which then kind of distanced you from the Father, because now you're dealing with shame, guilt, all of that. Right.
So you're kind of distancing yourself from the Father. Now all of a sudden she gets ill, and now you don't have that strong relationship to be able to lean back on.
Right.
And instead, now you're looking on the inside, you're blaming everyone else, you're doing all of this. And instead of, if you hadn't opened this door, so then now I see why you were blaming yourself, because you realize in hindsight, I opened this door, now God has left me. That's what religion has told us. God's done with me because I did this.
Right.
And so now I have no place to turn.
Right. And definitely, another kind of deep thought on that is that I got everywhere I got. I always knew God was blessing me, but there was a certain amount of, look at me.
Pride.
Yeah, look what I've done. I had a company called Ride, and it was successful. And I had this band, the Montana Ponies, and it was successful. And everything I was touching was working out. And then it's all evaporated, eviscerated, really, in one moment, And now, because of the shame, I'm thinking I messed all of this up, but I can't let anybody know that. So I'm blaming other people. And then, just like you said, then I think because of the way I grew, because of the way I understood God and the way he works, I'm thinking he has turned his back on me. And now I'm all by myself. And now, so there's a certain amount of like, okay, pull up your britches, pull up your boots, and let's go get it done. So I go take a job as a youth pastor and an associate pastor and a youth pastor of a church in Toledo, Ohio. And
Well, what would you say caused you to fall initially when you opened the door to pornography? I guess we use these such ridiculous religious verbiage.
To fall?
What caused you to fall?
What caused you to fall? You know, I had opened the door when I was a kid. You know, that door was opened when I was, I think, 8 years old. I found a little porno mag, you know.
Who's this?
That's not religious. Porno mag. Pornography magazine. And I took it to school, right? You know, and then I remember me and a friend, we found some in a trash can in a trailer park that we lived in, and we watched, you know, looked at all the pictures, and then so I can go back and I can remember all through my adolescence these things becoming, and so I had done a good job of
suppressing it
and faking it, and I believed that if I were to fall to that God would be done with me. I just believed that. And so because I believed it, then I did a good job of in horse vernacular, I always use this. It's like I put a bit in my mouth, and I was able to suppress and guard it, and don't fall to it, and don't fall to it, and don't fall to it. And then what was happening is I was having marital issues, and there was some lack of intimacy, and lack of, it was, there's a lot of things that was just happening in my marriage. And so I thought, I'll just bring introduce these into our marriage and these stories, and that did not work out. That backfired on me big time. And so
I can't imagine why.
I don't know why that would, and and I mean, I laugh about it now, but it was tragic, really. And then I knew enough to know. So instead of going, it's funny that we're talking about this, because instead of going to the pastor to say, Father, I've sinned. I mean, I wouldn't call him a pastor, but you know what I mean? I mean, a father. He was like a father figure to me. But instead of going to God and say, Father, I've sinned, I've fallen short, I've messed up, I went to the pastor because there's a certain amount of I believed God would kill me. I believed God was going to destroy my life. I believed God. So I was going to him sort of to some degree of self-preservation, not because I was sorry that I did it, although I was, but that wasn't the reason I was doing. I was trying to, oh no, like the door is opened, and I'm letting the demons in, and I'm letting God's going to, God, the wrath of God is going to be on me. And that's, in essence, that's what I really believed. And so I was going to the pastor for that. And that didn't turn out well at all, because there was no compassion, and there was back then they didn't know how to handle it, because I was on staff, so
they still don't know how to handle it.
Right. A lot of times.
Right.
I think they're better as a church
but
now.
There's still a lot of,
I could have just stepped out of ministry for a little while, gone to counseling, and everything would have been fine. But, it turned into more shame, added shame.
And then that's the problem, is you went from this disaster, and then you became a youth pastor in Toledo.
Yes.
So you were like living a double life.
For sure.
Because you had a great youth ministry, and he had great relationship with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that was powerful here, but it was like he couldn't.
It sort of gave me an evacuation, a scapegoat. It gave me because now it's about growing the youth department, and we went from like 7 kids to 120, and now I'm back on top, and the success, and look what I've done, and all this kind of stuff. But I was the broken foundation, was still broken, and I wasn't really healed up. I was able to put that back. I'll put another bit in my mouth. And I didn't fall to that again. And during that season, and I did everything right and by the book, and everything was going well. But I knew through the entire time that I was broken and there's something missing in me, and that this is not.
And it's just a matter of time before it all comes crumbling.
The other foot's going to land.
Yeah.
So there's a certain amount of, I believed that maybe I would die, that I would die of cancer, or God was going to get me somehow the other foot's coming down. And I was a youth pastor for 4 years. And during that 4 years, I did, I was able to hide it and pour into my kids. And I loved that time in my life, but it was like a distraction almost, because I was able to focus on all that and not really focus on healing and my relationship with God, and so then the pastor decided to step down, and they wanted me to be the elders came to me and asked me to be the senior pastor. And I knew, I never talked about this before, but I knew that was the last place that I needed to be. And that if I were to do that there would be a lot more when the other shoe fell, like I knew it was coming. I knew it would hurt a lot more people.
Well, and because you knew at that point that your marriage was over.
Yes.
So that's what you mean by when the other shoe fell.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that God was doing. It was the choices that he was about to make, because he had already known at that point, right?
Yeah, but I also believed that God was going to get me.
Right. I know, but I'm just saying
yes.
that this is the other side of it too.
Yes.
Is that you already knew at that point that you were going to probably go through a divorce.
I knew when I left
if you're at this level,
yes,
then it's going to hurt
That's
more
so
people.
good.
That the decision is going to hurt more people. So if you stayed at this level, there'll be collateral damage, but it wouldn't be as much as if you were up here. So at least you had the wisdom to do that. So what did you learn from all of this? The healing process, and now that we're on the other side of it, what did you learn from?
Well, I want to say too is that I knew when I left Montana that I was going to get a divorce, because some things had happened in there, and I was very angry with her. I found out that she was hiding things and not taking care of herself, and so I just knew that I just had to withstand the storm, and and I knew that I was off. That my relationship with God was off. There was a void in my life, that it was all crumbling down. And what I'm trying to do is step out. I'm trying to figure out a way to escape it all. If I can just step out of this reality and step out of even my relationship with God, I'm just like, this is all. So in that process, I'm trying to figure things out at the same time. There's a part of this left brain, right brain kind of thing. I'm trying to figure out, maybe there's grace, and maybe God will save my marriage, and maybe God will save my life, and then I would, something else bad would happen. I'm like, no, he's done with me, And one of those things was I was a part of a very religious church that was very, I went from the fire out of the frying pan into the fire, and they made me question every belief that I had, and not a good way. And so what happened, I'll never forget it. It came like dominoes, it just fell. And they came at me about, I think, faith. They were talking about, I was preaching one morning, and they said, use the word faith too much, people, blah, blah, blah. And what I realized is, okay, then I went and had a conversation with the pastor at a park, and what I realized is, okay, if this isn't true, if what you're telling me that this piece right here isn't true, then this is not true, and this is not true, and this is not true, and it's all a bunch of bull crap. It's all a bunch of hogwash. This is all just a lie. This is, and I, at that moment, I'm like, I'm out. That's my excuse. That's my reason. I'm out. She had gotten a new kidney and a pancreas transplant, and I'm like, I'm leaving her. I'm leaving the church. I'm leaving and I'm going to go drive truck. and I'm going to escape my life. I ended up being a bouncer at a bar and getting my truck license. And I just literally collapsed, fell apart. And I just threw everything away. Just all of it is done. I just give up. And then just kind of just thought I'll just live in a truck cab and seclude myself and be done with life for the rest of my life, and I legitimately thought that. I remember cognitively thinking, I'm done with life. I didn't even have the nerve, whatever you want to say, to kill myself. So in essence, I kill myself by just going away, and I remember even seeing like something on TV with these two people preaching and singing, and I thought, man, it's all a bunch of bull crap, bunch of lies.
So this just goes back to all the conversations that we've ever had, is that
yes,
it matters. First of all, it matters who you're listening to, and it matters the foundation that you have. That's why you need to have such a personal relationship, so that when you do hear a message or someone is starting to speak into your life or whatever, that whether it's good or not really so good, that the doctrine is sound or not really, or
that's good.
Who to believe or not to believe, or right from wrong, basically, so in a relationship. So that's just like if you and I are in a relationship and somebody comes up to me and says, Johnny was at this bar and he was hitting on this woman and he did all these things, I'm going to know because of our relationship that that's not true. So I'm not going to listen to everything everybody's going to say. Right. I'm going to know you for you. And that's so good. Because of this relationship, then I can know beyond a shadow of doubt that's not who he is. And so we're going to move past that and not believe that. But you didn't really have, because you're all over the place at this time with your relationship, you didn't really have that
a single
lean
voice
ability, if you will,
right.
to listen to the voice of God,
right.
and say, Johnny,
yeah,
what are you doing?
Right.
Not that he would say that, but
And I ostracized myself. I pulled away from going to church. I didn't go to church no more. I didn't read my Bible no more. I didn't pray no more. And it's funny how everything fed each other, and the next thing I know, I'm like alone. I'm one of the ones the wolves pulled out, because, that's how the wolves attack a herd, they just put pressure on that one and then get them alone and then attack, go after. And that's, I literally pulled myself out of the herd,
right. He's not going to say, what are you doing? But he's going to be that still small voice and say, that's not true.
That's not true.
You know the truth.
But really it was, the answer came in one night. I'm at a bar in Toledo, Ohio, and I'm bouncing, and she walked in, and my life was in complete shambles, and I just noticed her and walked up to her, and she recognized me. And that was my biggest fear, was anybody to ever be like, hey, aren't you Johnny Rowlett? And what happened to your life and all that kind of stuff. But it was her. I remember I came up and they were doing karaoke that night, and I said, hey, you want to do some karaoke? And she was with her friends, and she's like, no, but I know you. And when she did that, I turned white, and from the inside out, freaked out, like, I literally said out loud, you don't know me, I'm from Texas. And I turned around and walked off, and here she comes, and she chases me down, and she goes, I do know. And then we realized she knew me from Cornerstone Church, and she knew me from my past. And that was my biggest fear, but she didn't judge me. And she just, I wouldn't say she loved me, but she was a light. And
well, we were on the same journey.
Yeah.
We just didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah.
So, I'm at the bar with my friends. My life was complete shambles also.
Yeah.
So we kind of basically went hand in hand and brought each other out. Like, this is not a life that we want to live.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really skipping a lot of
A
things.
lot of things.
But
in that skipping,
I mean, it was a long process.
Yes.
Didn't just happen overnight,
No.
but it was a long process. But we realized this isn't the life that we want to live no longer. There's a better life. There's more peace. There's more joy in who God is and who God created us to be in our relationship with him. But it was a slow journey to get there, because trying to pull down all the religious beliefs, trying to realize that God never left us, that
Right.
we turned our back on him.
Right.
He didn't turn his back on us.
Not only did he not turn his back, he chased me.
Right.
And
so we're going to the bar thinking he'll
we're
never
hiding.
find us.
Yeah.
No one will ever find us.
God won't come in
including
this
God.
bar. Right.
Right. Exactly. Meanwhile, he's right there with us. Every drink, everything.
I want you to hear
every
that,
choice,
what she's saying.
He was right there with us the whole time, but we didn't realize that. Had we realized it earlier on,
I would have put him in that situation probably as much.
Decision, but
I literally see and saw, and I know this is deep, but I need you to hear me. This is how much I believe. For the first time, I saw not the religion of God, but I saw him as Father.
His
And
loving kindness.
His love, that he would, in my deepest, darkest despair, he sent her.
And we saw his grace and his truth during that time.
He came into my situation, into the bar. And not only did he not turn his back on me, he chased me in there. He never quit on me. He never gave up on me. And then over time, Gail got me to go to church. And I'm going to a church that I didn't even want to go to because I had an issue with the pastor. And then he, from the pulpit, it's like a 3,000 people church, from the pulpit says, Johnny's here, and just embraced me, asked me to breakfast. He comes to me in the morning to go to breakfast. And I'm thinking, here comes the religion part again. I'm thinking he's going to give me the spurs. Why have you messed up your life? Why have you turned your back on God? Why have you made these poor choices? And why have you done this? And I'm expecting, here comes the religion again. And I walked in the door, and he put his arms around me, put his head right on my chest. And I pulled him back. I looked at him, and he said, Johnny, it's time to come home. And I broke, because he didn't realize it, but she didn't realize it, but she represented the Father's love for me. And that they weren't quitting on me. They weren't giving up on me, but rather embracing me. He wasn't giving up on me. He wasn't quitting on me. No matter how many poor choices I made, I'm not relishing that and acting like anything that's okay. But in my worst possible place, he found me and rescued me, and he loved me, and he never quit on me, and he never gave up on me. He chased me into the lowest place, and he grabbed my hand and pulled me out and set my feet on solid ground. And here's the thing. He's no respecter of persons.
That's right.
And the same God that could do it for me did it for her. And the same God that could do it for her could do it for you. No matter where you find yourself today, no matter how many poor choices you made, no matter bad decisions, no matter wrecked lives around you, things you may not even be able to go back and fix, I wanted to leave you with this understanding that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. We all know that scripture. And when God gave his only begotten son, what did humanity do with this great gift? We put him on the cross and we murdered him. And instead of going, I see how you treat my son, I'm done with you. I'm done with y'all. I'm done with humanity. Instead of doing that, he comes into that moment at humanity's deepest, darkest place. And he says, I'll meet you at the cross. I'll meet you right there at the worst decision you ever made as humans. You put God on the cross, and I'm going to meet you right there. And he gives us grace. I'm letting you know that your God, the God of the universe, will never give up on you. He will never turn his back on you. He will
That's
never
so right.
quit on you,
So true.
but rather he will chase you through every place, and he's waiting for you to turn back. There's a lot of people. There was a lot of times that it took me a lot of years, and I'll finish this, but it took me a lot of years to really understand what I'm about to say right now. And there may be even people that disagree, and that's fine. You can disagree and, leave your angry comments below, but
Or don't.
or don't. Recently, I told her, I said, for years, I was still struggling with this, my religion side and the Father's love side. And I thought because we met in a bar and because everything, we lived together before we were married and we did everything we could do, we did wrong, right? I thought that God could not bless this and that this union would fall apart. And it wasn't until not too long ago that I saw, God gave me a revelation of the picture. No, Johnny, at your deepest, darkest place, I sent my love for you. Gail is literally the Father's love for me. And I don't always treat you like that, but I'm saying it right in front of everybody that you are the gift of God, of his showing me his mercy and his love. And I love her and I love him. So,
And I love you too.
I hope the gift of grace and truth will impact your life like it has mine. And I hope it'll bring you freedom like you've never known. We love you.
Thanks for joining us.